Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Hello and welcome back to All for United with a slightly updated thing. It used to be Reds Roundup, it's now Reds Weekly, and Benny is back, which I'm so happy with because we did some brilliant shows on my own. It wasn't the same without Benny. So, firstly, Benny, glad to have you back. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, mate. I'm glad to be back, mate. I'm glad to be back. It's been a while, but I'm raring to go, pal.
Fantastic. And join us for the first episode of 2022. We couldn't have anyone other than Tony. How are you doing?
Good. I've managed to get a short break for a holiday in the first couple of weeks. Got a little bit of sun, so I feel refreshed and ready to go, which is a good thing.
Nice one. Good to hear it. Vincent, John, great to see you in the comments. Everyone get your questions in. We'll try and get through as many as we can as the show goes on. We will just cover a couple of the weekend's results to start with. We'll start with the women's side. I believe the only side that did win over the weekend in terms of first team action. Obviously, we'll talk about the men in a second. But Benny, you were there. 5-0 win over Boom. That's back-to-back 5-0 wins, 4 clean sheets in a row. It's looking a bit more promising now, isn't it?
It is, mate. I think the team is starting to sort of gel together now, and I don't mean gel together because it's a brand new team. What I mean is gel together with the manager, with his ideas and the way he wants to play and the way he wants set up and everything. I think it's starting to come together now. You're starting to see now the players trust the manager a lot more. The manager trusting the players a lot more. It's a thing that I touched upon on the Saturday Night Live show on the Women's Channel with Matt. I've noticed that Mark Skinner now feels a lot more comfortable. He's a lot more at ease now in the job. He's not on the sideline barking orders all the time. He's now letting his assistant Martin Home do that sort of thing. Back the orders out, tell players where they need to be and everything, give the instructions, and he's seeing now a bigger overall picture of the game, which is good, I think. Which he's now trusting his coaching staff. He trusts his players fully, I think now, and we're seeing the benefits of that because the women's team, as I said, now another back-to-back 5-0 wins, 4 clean sheets in a row. They are flying at the minute, which is good to see. And the confidence seems to be back as well. That swagger seems to be back. That United swagger that we see that are instilling into United teams. The women's now are starting to get that swagger now back in there and the belief back into their games, and it's showing now because players are now not playing within themselves like they were earlier on in the season, before the winter break. They're now coming out and then they're now exerting themselves. They're pushing themselves to the limit. They're trying things that maybe they wouldn't have tried 3 or 4 months ago, and it's just good to see. It's good, positive football, really, And as you said, it's pretty much the only bright spark at the minute we've got as the women's team, in a way, in the way that it's the setup feels and the players are happy and the way they're playing the football. You can just sense they're enjoying it a bit more, and I think you saw that in Leah Galton's performance, especially. It seemed like the handcuffs were off, and she was flying, and it was their best performance of the season. And people that know me know that I'm a big Leah Galton fan. She's one of the Manchester United women's best players, and in fact, she's probably been the best player in the previous season or two. And this season, it just took a little bit of time for her to get up and running. And I think the shackles are now off, and she's she's playing the football that she likes to play. And I think that's a credit to Mark Skinner as well. The manager that has come under a lot of criticism with the way he plays, the way he seems to shackle some of the playing styles of our players. That he seems to trust that in the players, and he seems to be believing them a lot more, which is really, really good to see.
Yeah, definitely. I think John, I believe, was also at the game. Like I said, they're building the goal difference back up after a shaky start. Really, lost 6-1 to Chelsea. We had those 2 late goals that we conceded, Spurs and Everton back to back. It was 2 draws and the table was looking awful. We could have dropped to 10th at one point a couple of weeks ago, but as we said, 4 straight wins, 4 clean sheets, and we're back in the Champions League spot. So it could be the only teams in the Champions League next season. But it's going much better. I've always backed Skinner since as we all have, I think. But I've said since the start, I think Skinner's style was obvious to see. I just don't think the players quite understood it. And I think now we're starting to see that they're getting it. And it's really refreshing, actually, to watch a first team. And with the women's side, bare minimum, you're going to get effort, which is not something you could say with some of the players on the men's side at the minute. So that's really refreshing to see. I will just go and check out. There'll be more coverage, obviously, on the women's game on All for United WFC. There's just done a match reaction to that. So go and check that one out over there. Was streamed about an hour ago. So go and check that one out. Tony, I'll come to you then on the men's side then. Obviously, they drew 2-2 at Villa Park. You could argue in the FA Cup game, we got a bit lucky in that one. This one, obviously, we ended up coming away with a draw, and towards the end, you could argue that was pretty lucky as well. I mean, where do you kind of see, because the last time you were obviously on the show, Ollie, was about, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I think it was coming to the end of Ollie's tenure, but it doesn't seem like much has changed really. Where are you kind of at with this side at the moment?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask. Simply, I suppose for 2 or 3 reasons. 1, I'm a contextualist. 2, I'm an optimist, and 3, I'm old. So I've seen so many things worse than what we're going through at the moment that I tend not to overreact. So looking at what I'm looking, when I watch the players on the pitch, I suppose the question mark is, all of those players were playing really good football a year ago. We finished, forget the Villarreal final result. We finished second in the league. We were top of the table at one point. We were playing good teams. We were dominating possession. We're ticking a lot of boxes. And still a lot of people were moaning. And people were moaning because our expectations are higher. And I think there's a difference between expectation and realistic viewpoints. And with a team like City, for example, whether you like it or not, whether you want to give them any credit or not, I really don't care. We're not in that category at the moment. If anybody says otherwise, then they're kidding themselves. So second was the best we were ever going to do in that respect, given the quality of the league. So to get the second in the league against all those other teams, I thought was outstanding performance by the team and by the coaching staff and by the manager. Then the wheels fell off, as everybody knows, throughout the beginning of this season, almost kind of coinciding with Ronaldo coming to the club, and there's been lots of talk about it. And then we've had this free fall since. And I think, I do a lot of this work in business. When that happens, you get uncharacteristic behaviors. And it's all very well saying, let's sack Ollie and all of a sudden it's going to work out. Well, I've seen managers come and go for 40 years, 50 years. I've never seen any situation where, Doherty took over, we got relegated. So that was a great move. Today he would be sacked straight away. But there's a bit more patience to let him do what he needs to do. And he got us back up and playing great football. We went on to win the FA Cup, lots of optimism. And similarly with other managers as well. So I think there's been a huge overreaction. I'm not suggesting the football is great. I think we just need to give people time to see what goes on. Clearly, something is going on in the background that none of us know. There's conspiracy theories all over the place, which basically tells me no one's got a real clue. They're kind of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. So we've got players don't like each other, but they're having fun at the training ground. Well, hang on a minute, that doesn't work. They don't like Ronaldo, but they all go up to him and hug the hell out of him when he scores. So that kind of doesn't work. And so what I'm seeing is no real reasons why all this is happening, but it is happening. So I think we just got to be patient. And, yes, we're playing poorly. I think the first half against Villa, we started on the front foot. We looked like a team again. Fernandez, I thought, had an exceptional first half. And perhaps, Rangnick for the first time, didn't realise what the players are capable of. A lot of the players got tired very quickly because of the energy. Matic was one. We were without Mctominay. I think everyone realises that we're short of a couple of quality midfielders. I still don't get the love in with Van der Beek. I mean, if he was pulling up trees in training, if he was that good and he was doing it in training week in, day out, every single player would be yelling at Rangnick saying, put him in the team. But they're not saying that, so he can't be pulling it up in training. So if he's not pulling it up in training, he doesn't deserve a place. And every time he comes on, he's a decent player, like they're all decent players. Is he United quality midfielder? No chance. and there lies our problem. You know, it would be great to have Matic of 10 years ago. Well, we haven't got Matic of 10 years ago. We've got Matic as he is now, and he's you know, a utility player who can play, you know, half a game, 30 minutes, 20 minutes. I like the thought of bringing him on, you know, with 20 minutes to go to shore things up. That makes sense. Put him in front of the back four, give Fred the energy above him, you know, if he's still running around like a headless or whatever he does. But I don't know. I think it's I come off Twitter when we lose because the vitriol and the overreaction and the toxic nature of the comments. I just think I can't listen to it. But as I say, I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm a contextualist. I look at the context, and my expectation and realism tells me that we're not going to do great. So therefore, I don't get too disappointed or disheartened. I look at how we're going to fix things. So we need to change some personnel. Wouldn't it be great if Martial actually was motivated to play for us? I think there's a couple of players who are just dying to play for us and are disappointed. So what happens is the press get on board and say they're unhappy, they want to leave. Well, I've never heard any Man United player come out and say he wants to leave. They're all pissed off because they don't want to, you know, because they all want to play. Well, you can't play 25 players. The other thing is because of the pressure, which seems more intense than it's ever been in my history of supporting the club, the manager won't play the same players 10 games in a row. I think Sancho needs 10 games in a row. I think for his confidence, he just needs to play 10 games in a row. Someone puts their arms around him and say, look, son, you've got 10 games on the trot. Don't worry about your performance. Don't worry about just play your game. Take a man on. Be yourself. You're going to make mistakes. That's fine. Go out and have some fun. He's a young kid. But I think he's worried about making mistakes because of the impact it has on the team. And as a consequence, he's under pressure. And it's all right playing for Dortmund. He's not under pressure at Dortmund. You're under pressure when you come to Man United, that's for sure. So, you know, Rashford's the huge pressure on Rashford. You know, he's back from injury. Right, come on, Marcus, turn it on, please. You know, supporters, flick a switch, turn it on. Is that how life works? I didn't realise that's how life works. You know, if you've been out from work for however many months and you switch on day one, is that what your boss expects from you? I think our expectations of players as supporters is nothing short of stupid. It really isn't. And I'm not talking about fair and utter criticism. I'm not talking about that. So when you see people, you know, they're passing, something's wrong when their basic passing is just going astray, or forcing the game when we don't need to force the game. The only thing I will say, Connor, and just a personal opinion, I think one of the big issues is leadership. There's no leadership at the top in terms of the club. I think there's a question mark over the leadership in terms of manager. Is Rangnick going to stay? Is he not going to stay? Who's coming in? Who's not coming in? There's huge uncertainty. There's uncertainty about players' positions, the Van der Beeks of the world. Are they coming or are they going? And all that uncertainty needs a strong hand. And there's certainly no leadership on the pitch. So when you get a lack of leadership throughout the club, that causes uncertainty. And I think, just an opinion, I think that uncertainty causes a lot of the problems.
Yeah, I agree.
Liverpool, they have bad results too, but they don't have the lack of leadership. There's certainty there.
Yeah, there's always a reaction, and this is what's confused me. Benny, I'll let you have the last word on the first team in a moment. But I think for me, I think Andrew Wall said it on a show a few weeks ago that I think if you asked 100 United fans what's wrong with United, you'd get 100 different answers because there's so many things that people think that are the issues. And I do agree. I think under Ollie, maybe last season, when manager was under pressure, when we're under pressure, you'd see a reaction. You'd see us kind of bouncing back, wouldn't you? Whereas you don't see that anymore. And there just seems to be we call it down in tools, but I'm sure they don't. I don't personally believe any professional footballer goes out there and goes, I'm not going to try today, because that's not the kind of athletes that they are. So I think there's a whole host of issues, I think, and I don't think you can pin it on just one. I just want to say hello to some of the people in the comments. Rach, good to see you. Maisie, good to see you. Make sure you go subscribe to her channel as well. And yeah, I will be talking about Scott McTominay. Benny, I'll let you kind of open up on that one, actually.
To be fair, mate, I was going to ask Tony about McTominay because obviously Tony would have seen McTominay from whichever age group would have seen him first. I just wanted to get Tony's opinion on how he's developed, because he's another one that gets a lot of stick, McTominay, from a lot of people. Oh, he's not good enough. He only passes sideways. Doesn't really look to pass forward or take that sort of danger pass on, where or a risky pass, if you like. But yeah, he's the one that's when the chips are down and going gets tough. The one player that has always stood up for me is Scott McTominay. He's not. Let's be fair. He's not renowned as a goal scorer. Let's be fair. But he's putting for me. He's putting up trees for me. He's the one that's getting us goals. The header against Aston Villa was great. Could have had a couple the other week as well. He might have had a bit of an off performance against Wolverhampton Wanderers, but who didn't really in that team? Let's be fair. So I just wanted to get Tony's overall opinion on how McTominay's developed, because this is the player that Jose Mourinho obviously we felt really highly of as well, regarding him in high terms. How do you think he's developed, Tony?
When he was a junior, he was a forward midfielder, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a defensive midfielder. And to be perfectly frank, in our junior teams, up until this whole 6-8-10 thing, right?
Yeah,
that's a modern thing. It just didn't exist. So watching McTominay come through the system, we didn't play 6-8-10s. We played midfielders who were midfielders, and so they track back, they move forward, and Scott was a typical central midfielder, and he was more attacking minded than defensive minded, if that makes sense. And I think that's his best game. It's just an opinion. I think that's his best game. But even though he plays a lot of games, I sometimes think he's doing two people's jobs. I sometimes think, because of particularly this season, because of the nature of our performances and the nature of our results, I just think that he's under. And none of us, not any one of us who are supporters, know what they're told in terms of tactics before they go out on the pitch. So we don't know whether, Solskjaer or Carrick or Rangnick has said to Scott, play this role, do this for 20 minutes, and then depending on the way the game's going, you can move forward. We don't know any of that stuff, right? And nor will we. So all we see is what happens on the pitch. And I see, Ben, what you see. I see someone who's committed, who loves the club, who's passionate, wants to get stuck in, has got the capability of being a good, solid midfielder. There's a question mark about is he good enough to be a midfielder in the Manchester United midfield? I think it depends who else is there. If there's a Brian Robson, a Roy Keane, and a Paul Ince, and he's not going to get a kick. But if there's a Fred, a Mata, and a Matic, then I'd pick McTominay first. So I think, again, contextually, I would put him in our midfield simply because he's disciplined. He will go forward. He rarely gives the ball away. He'll get stuck in, which you need a midfielder to do. I think he's got more to his game than that, Benny. But I don't think we're seeing it yet because of the context of what's happening on the pitch.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I think some of the people in the comments that are watching now will know I'm a huge fan. I know, just referencing Maisie's comment there, there is the running joke of the Muck Zidane or whatever people like to call him. So I've kind of latched onto that. But I personally don't think he is as bad as people make him out to be. I think he is playing in a poor midfield, and ultimately you're only as good as what's around you as well a lot of the time. So you can't. And he's not a world-class midfielder that's going to take the game by the scruff of the neck, but he is a good player to have if you've got quality around him as well.
I think Connor, when Darren Fletcher came into the team, he was incredibly strictly criticised. But then over the years, next to Keane, next to Carrick, next to Nani, and a lot of other players, all of a sudden his confidence grew, his technique came to play, and then arguably through 2008, 9, 10, 11, he was probably one of our most important midfielders. But it took him 2 or 3 years to get there. And what we're expecting McTominay to do is we're expecting him to do that same job, but without Carrick and Scholes next to him. Well, good luck to anybody in that role. And people say, let's buy Declan Rice. Declan Rice would have exactly the same problems. He's going to be asked as a young midfielder to control our whole midfield. Well, he won't do it on his own. It's not how it works. Not at Man United.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And it kind of leads me on nicely into a question. One of the questions I was going to leave to later, but considering we're kind of half talking about the first team here, somebody that has that John's just mentioned was Alanga. Now, obviously, he has come in. Ralph has really spoke highly of him. It's one of the first players he spoke about in his first press conference, actually. He has come into the side. He's starting games now. What do you kind of think of his development? Because he was kind of on the fringes. It wasn't, not that I'm aware of anyway. It wasn't fully spoken about in the same level as like Rashford and Greenwood were. I mean, Rashford obviously we know just kind of came from nowhere. Greenwood was the one that was spoken about. This kid's going to be good, and he came in. Alanga kind of went under the radar a little bit. Are you surprised at all that he's kind of pushed his way into the starting 11, or have you kind of always seen this through the youth ranks?
I always think there's half a dozen footballers in every single season coming through that has the opportunity to make it, and what they need is they need 3 or 4 things. Okay, and let's be clear, they've all got talent, so that they wouldn't be at our club in our academy playing reserve team football if they didn't have the talent. So that's already there. Whether you like them or not is a personal thing. They do have talent. The second thing, so that's a given. So then what you're looking for is you're looking for 3 or 4 things. You're looking for emotional maturity. Can they make the step up? You're looking for physical maturity. Can they handle the physicality? And because Alanga's a winger, it's easier for wingers to make the step up than it is for any other role, because they're not put under the same physical pressure in terms of midfield battles or up against centre halves and stuff like that. So that's the second thing. So emotional maturity, physical maturity. I think the third thing is opportunity. So is there a pathway to the first team that allows them the games? And with Rashford's form, can you imagine Marcus Rashford coming back and being on fire? Alanga wouldn't even be anywhere near the first team. So there's an opportunity for him because of the pathway that others have given him through injury and poor form. So and that's the way that football works. And then the fourth thing is, as someone's mentioned in the comments, I think it was one of the lads there talked about, he looks like the shackles are off and he's going for it. So the fourth thing is you got to impress the manager when you get a chance. And forget this year. I don't know if anybody remembers his game against Wolves last season when he scored that bullet header and he had a cracking game.
Yeah.
Young players have got to, you're given an opportunity in the first team, but once you're there, you've got to prove you deserve to be there again. And the only way to do that is performances on the pitch. So I think he ticks all those boxes. I think he's been fortunate with the pathway because of injury and because of form of other players. For example, Martial's not in the team. Rashford's out of form and Sancho's out of form. So Alanga's really fourth choice, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And that's fortunate. That's fortunate. But you need a bit of luck. You need a bit of luck in football. So in terms of being under the radar, Connor, I think he's under the radar because at the beginning of the season, everybody was saying, wow, look at our forward line. Ronaldo, Sancho, Martial, Rashford, Greenwood. We were looking at the forward line going, oh, my God. And all the kids below them are thinking, how are we going to get a kick in here? Well, football doesn't work like that. Football doesn't work on, Football Manager or on a piece of paper. It's out there on the pitch, and now he's getting a chance, and he's confident, and he's always been confident. The thing is, Connor, he's incredibly pacey. He is, and he will scare players. So as long as the manager is saying to him, go out and take them on, and I saw one of the ladies on the chat box, I think it was Rach, saying, Sancho doesn't feel as if he's got the confidence to take someone on. As long as people are saying, take him on, son, then I think that excites the crowd, that gets people off their back. It gives those players confidence. And, look at Marcus Rashford now. You don't feel like he's going to take a player on. He's lost the confidence to do that. Sancho the same. And so I think what happens with young players is they don't feel the pressure in the same way that established first team players feel the pressure. Because if they get dropped, it's almost expected because you're just getting a taste. If Rashford gets dropped, how does that impact his England career? If Sancho gets dropped, how does that impact his career? There's different pressures on these players. So it's a good question about Alanga, and all he's done is taken his chance and proven that he can do the job, and good luck to the lad because he's a good player.
Yeah, I remember him in Sorry, Ted, I was just going to say, I remember him in pre-season. He was flying until he picked up a knock. And I think he would have been involved in the first team a lot sooner had he not picked that knock up.
Potentially,
I can't remember if it was during pre-season or it was just during changes before the season started, but he looked hungry in pre-season. And like you said, his pace is electrifying. You were watching for the 23s at times, and they maybe play him off the front man. You know, he gets in behind so easily because he's so rapid and quick. No one's catching him. And as you said, I think that some of these youngsters to come in, they've got no fear. They've got no fear of letting people down. They've got no fear of giving the ball away because they know, especially at United, that the fans love to see young players coming through. So they're always going to go on, kid, go take him on the outside, take him on the inside, go have a run at him. You know, and people are less likely to get on his back if he does make a little bit of a mistake. You know, whereas I think you're perfectly right. If it was a Rashford, for example, confidence is low, his body language is not quite there. Whether his operation went well or not, or he's still recovering from it, who knows what exactly is wrong with Marcus? But he's going to seem to have the whole world on his shoulders, and it's not looking like the Marcus Rashford that we know. We know that Marcus Rashford will get the ball down, he'll run at players, he'll try to take a player on the outside, but at the minute, it just doesn't seem like he like you said, his confidence is so low. And the same with Sancho, that they don't like to. They seem to play within themselves and not express themselves like they would have done maybe 6-12 months ago, you know. And as you said, the Bundesliga especially is a totally different kettle of fish to the Premier League. You know, the Premier League is fast-paced action. You know, it is a lot tougher. It's a lot, you know, players are in your face straight away, basically. You know, you ain't got the time that you've got in Germany where you've got the luxury of time on the ball and you look amazing, you know. So I think that's it's gonna be a huge learning curve, I think, this season for Jadon Sancho. But I expect to come good next year, in my opinion. I really do. Once he's had a season in English football and he's got used to it, and yeah, so
they're all good players.
Yeah, exactly. Which will lead me on to the next thing. I won't because I want to talk about the FA Youth Cup because I love the FA Youth Cup. You know, we are the record 10-time holders of this competition, but we haven't won it since 2010-11. So my first question is, like the Men's Senior Cup, do the club still take that competition seriously? Has it lost a little bit of its shine? Because we always hear that, you know, we took it very, very seriously, you know. But you don't hear about it much, and I know you had a bit of a grumble. I'm pretty sure I saw on your socials about the match report after the Reading game. After we beat them 3-1, there wasn't as much of a match report. You had to go through adverts and whatever to get to the little bit of highlights that they had for the footage of the game. Are we not taking it as seriously as a football club anymore?
Okay, it's a good question, Benny, and I think you need to separate two things. You need to separate the football team from the football club. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, the two have never been as far apart in my time supporting the club. So as far as the football team is concerned, and I say this about any competition, I don't think, and I agree with Connor, I don't think any player goes out there to lose. And as far as the FA Youth Cup is concerned, I know for a fact that every single one of those players knows all the history about the Busby Babes winning it first 5 years in a row. They know, they get told all about the Munich air disaster. They get told about the 64 team with Best and Aston and Sadler and all those, and Bobby Noble and Jimmy Rimmer. They get told about the Whiteside Hughes. They get taught about our Youth Cup history. I know that for a fact. And their ambition is to win the Youth Cup. They take it incredibly seriously. The players are gutted when we lose, more gutted than any other game. It means it's a massive thing for our club. And a couple of things has happened. Okay. And if I talk out of turn, you know, and other people jump in, then I'm happy to hold my head against it. A few things happened during the 2000 when we won it in 2010-11, we had an exceptional team. And that team got to the semi-final the following year and did pretty well the year after that as well. So even though we haven't won it, we did pretty well. And then what happened, there was a massive period of underinvestment in the academy. We had huge issues with the academy. City had huge investments in their academy based on the money. Most of you remember they built the new stadium. There was lots of talk about some of even our players, their kids were going to the City Academy because the coaching was better, the facilities were better. This is all true, by the way, this was all true. And an incident happened at Carrington with Woodward, where he confronted the then youth coach, Paul McGuinness. There was a fallout and McGuinness left. And McGuinness was one of the best youth coaches and still is one of the best youth coaches in the game. And it's, by the way, it's great to see him back in the game at Leicester City looking after their academy. And Paul is exceptional in what he does. And when that happened, you tore the backbone out of the club. At the same time, not only was City investing, but Chelsea went and spent 30 or 40 million pounds on players from all over Africa to bring into their team. And therefore what happened is you suddenly had City and Chelsea dominating the Youth Cup. So we had no chance because we had years of underdevelopment. Then all of a sudden, Nicky Butt came in and we started, and John Murtagh, Nick Cox and a few others, and we started addressing those issues. And once we addressed those issues, you're playing catch up. That's a 10-year cycle. So you're not going to see anything happening for another 10 years. That's how it works, Benny. Because once you stand still, you actually go backwards. Meanwhile, all these other teams have gone in. So what you're seeing now at Chelsea is you're seeing the Mason Mounts and the Reece Jameses and the Adoys and all these. They were members of those youth teams 5 and 6 and 7 years ago. But that's because Chelsea invested and we didn't. Now, I'm not saying we're bad players. We still got Rashford coming through, Greenwood coming through, but we didn't do well in the youth tournaments. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you get inconsistent results. Like you can beat Chelsea, which we did, and Greenwood scores his hat trick, and then we get knocked out by Brighton. So you get very frustrating results. So we take it incredibly seriously. We're going through a cycle at the moment. The last 2 seasons we've got very close. We've got to the semi-final during COVID, the first year of COVID. We got to the semi-final and we lost 1-0. So in that game, that could have gone anywhere, and we could have got into the final. So we're not far off, and we've got some very talented kids coming through the 16s and the 18s at the moment. So I'm always optimistic about the juniors coming through. Our record of bringing those kids, and by the way, for all Chelsea and City, they're still not bringing kids into the first team. The ones I've named they have, but they're still not doing it as consistently as us. So it's all very well having great investment in youth and winning youth cups. I think my point is I think we can do both. I think we have the ability to win things and bring kids through the first team, but it's going to take time for us to do that again. So the second part of your question was about the football club and the way it doesn't do match reports. I have no idea who runs the communication department at Manchester United. I have no idea who sets that policy. I've emailed people. I've tried to connect with people on LinkedIn. I've tried to connect with people through the Man United email process, and I just get ignored. And they probably are right in doing it because I'd probably be on one. And I just don't understand why this season they've suddenly decided that our fan base is not knowledgeable enough to realize that, some poor results is a cycle and that we're not going to get on all these kids' backs. If that's the reason they're not telling us what happens, then that's ridiculous. But what I think they've done this season is they're now starting to schedule reserve team games on purpose to match the first team dates. So therefore they don't have to record it. And that is criminal. That is stopping a lot of people, whether they have MUTV subscriptions or not, going down to see the kids play at Lee, because we can't go to Carrington because of COVID. So we have no way of watching these kids live. And the coverage on MUTV is not MUTV's fault. It's the club's fault and the policymakers, and they're a disgrace. And they need to look in the mirror and say, who are you actually trying to look out for? Because we don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's something I think you mentioned last time about, because when we asked you about certain games, you said obviously there's not much to know. So I think when I've looked at, trying to find out how the academy is doing, you get like 10 photos, or 10 stills, photos of the game, but literally nothing else. It'll be like, look at Mcneal in action. Well, that's great, but how did he play? Where's the report? What how was it? So I agree. I think Benny, I think it was you that said to me that last Saturday just gone is a prime example of this. When we had, I think, was it the 18s at 11:30? The women played at 12, the men at 5:30, and the under 23. I think in that order.
23s were 7:30. Yeah.
So it's absolutely ridiculous, because it's like you said, how are you supposed to keep track of these players if you can't get to Carrington, like you said, because of the COVID rules and things like that? You can't, if they're clashing with first team games, you can't go there. And also, if there's no match report, you're relying on what you said last time, Tony. I think you're relying on people that are there, coaches and family members, maybe to pass on information, which I don't I'm with you. I'm as baffled as everyone else. I think that this has only been from what I understand, this is something that's new, is it?
Connor, I'll tell you what I do on a Saturday, right? So the first thing I do is I have to go onto the opposition's website, and I go onto the opposition's website because it's better than our website, and I find out who the under-18 players are, and then I get their names and I put all their names on Instagram. I don't even follow these kids, right? I put their names in Twitter, I put their names on Instagram, on all the different social platforms, and then what you do is you uncover that their family are members at a game, and they post a video or they post it, and that's the way I find out what's actually happened. I have no idea what's happened through our own players because they're not allowed to say anything. They're not allowed to post anything on social media. Our communications department isn't posting, so I have no idea what's going on. I find it all out through hours and hours of research every Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon by finding out who the parents are of the opposition players and following their social media accounts, because they're the ones that are allowed to the game. And that's what I've done all season. It takes a lot of time, but I've been doing this for 50 or odd years. It's the only way I find out what in actual hell is what players are coming through, because there's no communication, there's no information. It's totally unbelievable. I can show you a yearbook from 2004 where we had every lineup of every team going back to the under 12s. Now I understand that's a bit ridiculous now with data protection and you want to protect people. I understand that. I do get that. But under 16s, they're on TV with England internationals, in the Victory Shield games. So if they can be on TV for the FA, why can't they be on TV for MUTV? And again, I'm not blaming MUTV because they only can show what the policy makers are allowing them to show. It's a completely ridiculous. And all they need to do is do a match report with the lineup and the substitutes and tell people what's going on. That's all they need to do. It's so simple, and they won't do it. And even worse, if you do go to Lee Sports Village, they won't even give you a team sheet.
No, that's what I say. No team sheets. Also, what I want to mention about that as well is if you're playing away from home, there's very little ever ticket information. For example, like the Papa John's Trophy. There's never any proper advertisement. Oh, tickets are available here. You have to proper dig deep into the website. Or sometimes it's been in a couple of previous years, bringing the club up. Oh, do you know if how we could get hold of tickets? For example, Sunderland away, where for the Papa John's Trophy. Sometimes it takes them ages to know what the hell you're talking about, even the people in the ticket office. So
it's a long way since the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, where there was match reports in the programs of every single one. We've come a long way. We've gone backwards. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm having a little moan, but what's still great is we're still producing kids. There's still a huge, dearth of talent in our club. We're having some wonderful performances by some really special players. It was fantastic to see Charlie Savage and Zidane Iqbal get a chance in the championship game at the end of last year. That was just fantastic. Their families were over the moon. If you followed their families on social media, they were obviously doing cartwheels everywhere. I mean, I love it when I see that stuff. And good luck to them. Good luck to both those lads.
Absolutely. Just, I don't know. I think I saw you at Old Trafford anyway for the Scunthorpe game. But what have you made of the two FA Youth Cup games so far? The two pretty convincing victories for United there, by the looks of it. Not very, very rarely trouble. And then I believe you might want to lead into something about Charlie Mcneal. Someone had a question about his goal scoring this season.
Yeah, I think we do look strong. We look strong in midfield. We've got three really good midfielders in that team, which bring very different things into play. So we've got Kobe Mainu, who's kind of like the beast, if you like, and he provides the power and the strength in that what I would call the 8 role, the modern 8 role. You've got another lad who has performed exceptionally well in both youth games that I've seen him this year, Maxi Oidelli. And he scored a goal against Scunthorpe, a really good goal. And I thought he was exceptional, probably man of the match against Reading, for those who saw it on MUTV. I thought he was exceptional, and he just got tired towards the end. He got a bit of cramp and had to get taken off. But he was really busy, and he's that kind of busy number 6 player that keep things ticking over in that kind of role. But the other player that people might know of, because they kind of put a little bit in the press, was Hansen Owen, the Scandinavian lad, Isaac Hansen Owen. He's starting to show the talent he's got in the 10 role, and he's got those silky skills. He glides past people. So you've got a real mix of midfielders, but a really strong midfield who complement each other really, really well. And then you've got 2 good wingers in Garnacho, who scored a lot of goals this season. He scored I don't know if anybody remembers the Scunthorpe game who watched it. He scored that really fabulous volley where he lifted, the ball came across and he lifted himself in the air and scored a cracker just before half time. So he's on one side. And then you've got Sam Mather, who the club thinks very highly of because he's playing upper level. He's actually younger, but he's playing up. He's even featured in the reserves this season. So and then you've got Charlie Mcneal up front, who's keeping Hugel out of the team. So and Charlie is not as prolific this season as he was last season. So last season he scored nearly 30 goals in all comps. This year he's only scored 8, and that's simply because he's played a lot of reserve football and he's found the step up very physical. And a lot of young players will do that, particularly centre forward. He's still very slight. He's a player who likes the ball in front of him rather than his back to goal, and so as a consequence, he will struggle a little bit more with the way we play. But he's still hungry. He works hard. He certainly knows where the back of the net is, and he scored another belter against Reading as well. He scored against Scunthorpe, but scored against Reading a really good goal. We dinked one way and put it past the keeper on the other. So I'm expecting him to really push on in the second half of the season.
So I'm just gonna one of the questions I did have, and it's obviously on the thumbnail of the show. It feels like a good time to kind of bring this in, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. If you had to pick 5 players then to look out for, so to speak, in 2022, let's say the calendar year, is there anyone that you can see? It doesn't necessarily have to be breaking into the first team, but names that maybe people aren't speaking about and should be speaking about. If you could pick 5 players, I know that might be difficult with so many good ones in the different age groups. Who would you go for as kind of like ones to watch, so to speak, for 2022?
It goes back, Connor, to our previous conversation. With very limited coverage on TV, it's very hard to see any consistency from one game to the other. But some of the names I pointed out there, Maxi Oidelli, I've been very impressed with Maxi. Another player is a fullback called Habib Ogunai. I think that's how you pronounce it. He got injured. He came into the the 18s, took a knock. I like him a lot. He's a fullback in the Laird style, in the Ethan Laird category. I thought someone in the youth game who was under the radar a lot this season, but he really impressed me, was Lewis Jackson, the centre half. He reads the game well. He's powerful. He's a traditional centre half. I think he'd be very interesting to see what he does in the reserves. And Garnacho's the other one. I think I've spoken before about Finlay McAllister and James Nolan, but they're probably a year behind. But Garnacho's the other one that I think every time he plays, he goes under the radar, Connor, because he keeps scoring goals and he's got an eye for goal, and he's also very good. He's a wingman, and he does things that people don't necessarily notice. So he would be one that I think might be worth watching as all these players start to move into the reserves. The player in the reserves that I think some people have mentioned before that I think might be that kind of next player to look for somewhere near the first team would be Alvaro Fernandez.
Good player.
The left fullback, left wing back. I think there's something about him defensively. A lot of people have question marks about his defensive play, and I understand those question marks. But depending on the role you want him to play, I think he's exceptional going forward. He's very composed. He's got great technique. He knows where the goal is. He puts in a cracking cross. I like him a lot. I think he's one that might just be worth looking. I noticed Vincent on the chats just talking about Mark Gerardo. I've not been so impressed with Gerardo. I think he gets caught defensively. He's still very small, so it'll be interesting to see as he grows, does that change? And when people run at him, he gets kind of run over, if that makes sense. Particularly with big, I noticed that at Reading, when Reading had a couple of big lads, and he was kind of pushed off the ball, and he didn't perform really in the way that you might expect. But no doubt he's talented. I think, as I say, they're all talented. I don't think Mark's as impressive as some of the other names I mentioned. But the thing is, and you know this, guys, you know this from your own experiences, you can't tell. At 16, who would have thought Mctominay would have been a first-team player, or Jesse Lingard's slightly different. But, you know, you look at some of these players and you think it's very, unless they're a Greenwood, you know, you're really tossing coins at 16 and 17. It's real guesswork. But they're ones to impress anyway, Benny.
Yeah, 100%. Sorry, Ben, I'll let you just jump back in. I just wanted to make a quick point on Fernandez. I think, you know, the games that I've seen this season in the 23s, that he's the player. You know, I know obviously people have talked about, you know, Measury and these kinds of people. Every time I just say Fernandez, you know, from my first time, you know, Benny, when we went down to Kidderminster to obviously watch that preseason game, ever since then, I've just looked at him, you know, like you said, people may question his kind of defensive thing, but I mean, you know, going forward, and you know, he's very quick, you know, he's very agile. So, you know, if he can
show very physical as well. You can tell he's come from the Spanish league. You see, you know, I think we was on about it on a previous show with Tony, that some of our players look quick, a bit slight, a bit dainty, and you know, but there's Fernandez. You can tell he's from the Spanish leagues. You know, he's built like, you know, a man, if you know what I mean. I think there's still a bit of bulking that he can do, you know, but for me, his physicality near enough is near enough there for me, you know. So it wouldn't surprise me if he made the step up anytime soon.
Well, going
maybe
back
next
to
pre-season. Sorry, Pat. Sorry.
No, I think, Benny, you're right. I think we talked earlier about Langer and his emotional maturity and physical maturity. I think Fernandez is in that category. I think tactically is the issue, his defensive tactics. But again, you know, you don't know what he's been told. So you don't know if his manager has said, look, you know, Hardley and Mengi, you're going to cover for this lad. We want him to bomb on, which means, you know, we're going to get caught at the back. We just don't know. We make assumptions. Every time we concede a goal, we blame the fullbacks or blame the defenders, and it's very easy when you really don't know, you know, what the manager is trying to do. And there's a lot of experimentation at that level as well. So you have to wait and see. But I agree. I think he's got all the things in his locker from a talent perspective and from a maturity perspective. Let's wait and see. But he's one. I know Connor's talked about Hugerwerth and Emran. Two very interesting and very different players, Connor. I think Hugerwerth is in and out of the team because he's been incredibly inconsistent. I was watching him warm up on the sideline at Lee Sports Village a couple of weeks back, and he just didn't seem interested. And he'll come on the pitch and he'll do something spectacular to say, wow, what a player. And then he'll go missing for 15, 20 minutes. And I think that's why he's not getting a run in the team. He's been on a subs bench more than he started games. So clearly the coaching staff, for whatever reason, are prioritising other players. I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves the club, either at the end of this season or perhaps afterwards. His contract's not renewed. As far as Emran's concerned, he's been unlucky with injury. So he's been in and out of the team virtually ever since he arrived with one injury or another. And he's just dropped back into the team in the last couple of weeks. He was reserve in the game against Tottenham, and he played on the weekend against Manchester City. So he's just finding his feet again. He's very similar in style to, I'm just trying to think, in style to a Greenwood in terms of the way he'll dink shoulders and go past left and right. He clearly hasn't got Greenwood's quality in terms of finishing and Greenwood's tactical brain, but he's got that kind of silky, you know, Zaha almost like quality of going past people. So it'd be interesting. I think the jury's still out on Emran. So I think that's interesting. Also, I just noticed from someone saying Mcneal's got more appearances. Andrew Wall said Mcneal's got more goals than appearances in the under-18s. You're right, Andrew, he actually has. I think the problem with Charlie at the moment is just physicality. When he steps up to the reserves, he's getting pushed off the ball a lot. I saw him in a game against Crystal Palace. I've never seen two bigger centre halves. They must be first-team players. And poor Charlie was up front on his own against Crystal Palace. He had no chance. And so the only thing you can say is, well, I hope he learns something. He learns about his running, learns about, the timing of his runs, learns about pulling defenders out of position. Again, we don't know what Neil Wood's been telling Charlie, but he was on his own in that game. And he hasn't got a chance of scoring and doing any of that stuff because he's up against physically totally different players. So once he fills out, once he develops, we're hoping his goal scoring ability, which is unquestionable, will transform to the first team. But we've seen this before with a lot of young players who score a hatful of goals for the reserves, and they can't quite do it. The Makedas, the Giuseppe Rossis, all good players, but they can't do it consistently every time they step up for one reason or another, and that's really interesting. So that's Charlie Mcneal. A little bit on Emran and Hugo. Thanks for the question. And Vincent said, I hope Gerardo improves because he come from a good academy. I think that's right. I think his pedigree's there. His pedigrees. It's whether he can push on. I know Vincent's also talked about Hannibal. I think has anybody been watching the
AFCON?
Yeah, and also Hannibal's performances for Tunisia in the previous tournament. I think he's really maturing. I'm really excited about him coming back. I think if he was back in the team, him or Van der Beek, I know who I'd be wanting to sort of excite me. I think he's a real option if he keeps developing. I think his call up to the Tunisian side and his opportunity of playing half a dozen, 10 games for his country, I think that's going to bring him on amazingly. So that's a good comment, Vincent, in terms of Hannibal Measury, who we've kind of not really talked about today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to move the show along because I know we're coming towards the end. Maybe some of our loanees, get your opinion on how they're doing. And one I was going to start off with, if I may, is one that's gone under the radar a lot because he's not been spoken about a lot. Everybody's obviously excited about how Ghana's doing at Forest, how Laird's doing. Now he's going to be moving on to Bournemouth, and how he's been doing at Swansea, obviously. But the one that's really gone under the radar for me is, and no one's talked about, is Brandon Williams at Norwich City. I don't know if you've been able to see much of Brandon or you've been keeping tabs on Brandon much, but I just wanted to get your opinion on how you reckon he's been performing for Norwich City, and does he maybe come back a better player, if you will, from this experience of playing in a team that's in a bit of a relegation dogfight?
I mean, firstly, I don't know Brandon incredibly well, but I've watched him before COVID. I've watched him come through the system, and you get to kind of know someone's attitude and style and all the rest of it. That kid will love a dogfight. So being at Norwich and having to fly into tackles and battle every single week, that's his game. That is his game in a nutshell. He will love it there. And will he learn stuff? Absolutely. I think, and the other thing, Benny, is I think any player that you send on loan, as long as they play, they're going to learn loads. So, Galbraith has come on a treat at Doncaster. Garner's come on a treat at Nottingham Forest. You've mentioned Laird, obviously, at Swansea and now Bournemouth. Dishon Bernard at Hull City. He's getting regular runs. He's another one under the radar that he's loving his football. He's performing. He's in the team every week. It's a very competitive league he's in. He's learning loads. All these kids are going to come back with a thirst for wanting more first team action with more experience, Brandon included. And I don't see any reason why Brandon shouldn't be pushing Wan-Bissaka. I'm not a Dallo or a Tellez fan in terms of them being any better than what's in our academy. I'd rather give Williams and Laird a chance to continue. They're going to make mistakes, but Tellez and Dallo are too. So I kind of think that sometimes we give these players more games than we would give a youth player. So I think Brandon made some mistakes when he was in the first team the season before last. I think he'll learn from that as well, and I think he'll come back in and push people. The other thing that Vincent's just said is Chong's gone back to Birmingham. I've got a funny feeling he might be involved in a few games for us before he does that. So it'll be interesting to see where Taith Chong comes back from injury as well. But yeah, we've got a lot of lads out. And the other ones, Tu and Zabi's gone to Napoli. Be interesting to see what Axel does over there. I think that's a great learning opportunity for him. And obviously Mengi has also gone to Birmingham. So I think for once, a lot of the loans are working out, because to get them right is really, really difficult. But they're all getting game time and they're all performing really well.
Just before Connor jumps in, the other one is Dylan Levitt. I've not really heard much of Dylan Levitt. I don't know if you've heard much how he's performing on his loan move.
Carrying some injuries, so he's been in and out of the team. The Dundee United team, they like him. He's doing really well in the team. He's just in and out with little niggles right now. Tony's asked about Palestri. I don't know, Tony. Tony Squires said, I'm not sure. Him and one or two others, Pereira obviously in Flamengo. We've got a couple of players out on international loan, and I haven't been following them as closely as I've been doing with the homegrown boys. And also, obviously, those lads haven't come through the academy, so I don't tend to follow the Bishops and the Palestris careers as closely as I do some of the other players.
Yeah, definitely. And just you mentioned I just want to bring up this comment, Brandon. Really appreciate that. And thanks for all your comments. I think the one player that I just wanted to ask on, you've already mentioned him, Ethan Laird. Do you think it's the right thing moving him from Swansea to Bournemouth? Obviously, Swansea are quite near the bottom of the table. Bournemouth, the top of the league at the moment. Or they were last week. He was high flying at Swansea, an assistant that suited him. Martin, obviously, got on really well previously, obviously with MK Dons. Do you think that's the right decision to pull him out of there when he's playing so well and put him in a team with a manager that he's not comfortable with? Because in some ways that might be good for him to get him out of a comfortable environment and put him into a new side where the pressure's maybe on, fighting for the title and things like that, rather than a mid-table Swansea side that are not really fighting for much. Do you think that's going to work out better for him?
I think there's a number of factors. Factor number one is, what's he going to learn? So he's had a great experience at Swansea in the first half of the season. Is he going to learn anything different in the second half of the season? There's a question. The answer to it, I don't know. If we then send him somewhere else, is he going to learn some totally different things, particularly on the mental front? I think Ethan Laird's a player, and I can't wait. I think he's going to get a chance. I think he'll get a chance in our first team because I think he's a very, very good player. And I think all this loan stuff was only going to do him the world of good. But the other thing, Connor, is we've got to test his capability as well. And at the moment, doing Swansea, is he being tested? Again, I don't know. And then the third point is, we don't know what conversation has gone on between Neil Wood and the coaching staff and the academy staff and Ethan saying, what do you want, Ethan? Do you want to stay at Swansea for the rest of the season and coast? Or do you want to have another challenge and see how you do this? And I don't know Ethan personally, but he may well have said, I'd love another challenge. Well, let's go to Bournemouth. There's a good manager there. It's an experienced team, more experienced team. We've just come out of the Premiership. It's a different challenge. Are you up for it? And maybe that conversation has said to, and Ethan said, yeah, I'm up for that challenge. And now all of a sudden the club's saying, do you know what? This kid, he's got the right mentality. He's saying yes to everything. He's going to have a go, rather than saying, no, I like it at Swansea. Let me stay here. I mean, I'm making huge assumptions here, Connor, because I don't know the answer to these questions. But these would be some of the things that be going through my mind when a player's out on loan and he's doing really well. I mean, Garner's doing well, but he's not doing well every week, if you get my point. He's pushing himself every week. Galbraith's pushing himself every week. I think Laird, taken to it like a duck in water, I think he's better than half the players they've got in that team.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that good a quality?
Yeah, because I did a show last week and I've done one previously with Swansea fans talking about Laird, and obviously they didn't want to, for obvious reasons, didn't want to let him go. They really highly rated and really loved, actually, from what I've heard from people around Swansea, really liked around the squad as well, a good person to have around the squad. So, maybe, like I said, it's an extra challenge, and, winning, if Bournemouth do obviously go on to win the league or get promoted, whatever it is, obviously he's then got that in his locker, the winning mentality then to drive on. So yeah, I think me personally, I think it might do him good. I was a bit skeptical when I saw it because I thought, he's doing well. Do you really want to drag him out of that, midway through a season to a team where he may not be guaranteed to start?
He might have wanted it, Connor. We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Benny, I know you've got one final question before.
Yeah, just on the midfield situation now, we've got a lot of great midfielders coming through, obviously. And I know you've highlighted Hannibal as well. But I just want to know, in your opinion, how far is James Garner off first team? Because he's had a lot of praise, especially of his performance as Arsenal in the FA Cup. He had a really, really good performance. He's a lad that's not scared to put his foot in. He can play the ball, he can pass the ball. He's got a great range of passing. He's got a great shot on him. He can take a free kick. I'm just wondering, for the likes of Galbraith and for the likes of Garner and for the likes of for the likes of those sort of players, are they now, because they've been alone? Because take, for example, James Garner, he's been on loan at Nottingham Forest. And obviously, with Hannibal having a great time with his national team, as you're saying, does it put maybe Garner down the pecking order a little bit, whereas maybe Garner maybe had a higher ceiling, possibly even 12, 18 months before?
I'm not being funny, right? Here's what I would do with Garner. I would say to him, and of course, it always depends what the first team is doing. And the first team isn't doing very well. So do you want to take a kid out of Nottingham Forest where he's enjoying his football and put additional pressure on him in our first team right now? Huge question mark, Benny. But here's what I do know. I would rather see James Garner come off the bench as a number 6 than Matic come off the bench as a number 6. I would rather Garner come off the bench because he plays 6, Hannibal plays 10. So I would rather him come off the bench for the final 10 minutes to shore things up. And I'm comfortable he would do a job. That's where I think his next development role is. And then let's see if he can start to push on into the first team on a more regular basis. Because we're crying out for a 6 to sit in front of the back 4, and we're letting Scott McTominay do it. Why not give Jimmy Garner a chance? That's where I'd be doing it. We wouldn't start him every week because he hasn't necessarily got the Premier League experience yet. Midfield's a funny role. You don't just walk into it. Young kids just don't take that role. Not at United. Other clubs maybe, but not at United. So I think there's, look at Foden, and he's a 10. He wasn't playing every week. He was in and out, in and out, in and out. Now he's getting more regular games. I think it's slightly different. So personally, I think he's probably going to stay where he is, given what's happening with our first team. I think that's the right thing. And then what will happen is bring him back next season, and then phase what's his name out, match out, and 1 or 2 others, and bring in Jimmy for that role. That's the kind of thing that I'd like to see, Benny. Now, whether Galbraith and Levitt can do that, I have bigger question marks over those two.
I know you spoke really highly of Galbraith. That's why I mentioned Galbraith. And Levitt was the one I was trying to get out, but couldn't get my words out then. But I know you spoke quite highly of Galbraith.
I like Galbraith. I think Garner's the player. Galbraith is doing it at Doncaster. Garner's doing it at Forest. We're talking about levels here. Galbraith probably needs a championship loan next season to see if he can take that next level up. And then he's a year behind Garner probably. Yeah. But Hannibal's a 10. So I think.
I know there's different positions, but I was just thinking, with Hannibal and likely to come into the first team, because I know Ralph speaks really highly of Hannibal. I was just trying to say in terms of ceiling, because obviously 12, 18 months ago, Garner, well, even then, Hannibal's always had a high ceiling himself, but everyone would have put Garner as the next one to break through. But that's why I sort of put him in the same bracket. I know they play different positions, but,
No, I know what you mean,
Yeah.
Just quickly before we wrap up, I don't know whether, Tony, you want to jump. There's a conversation going on in the comments at the moment, which started, I believe, with this one from Apex. Talking about majority of these players will never be regular for Manchester United, which, I do agree with. It's something, Tony, you brought up. I can't remember exactly the statistic you said about Manchester United academy players that are now in the football system in the pyramid. but obviously we've spoken a couple of times on these shows that just because they go into the pyramid, that's not a failure on their part. So I don't know whether you have anything to add on this discussion that's going on.
Well, Apex here has said the majority of our players will never be regularly for United. Well, I mean, that's an obvious statement in one respect, because you've only got 11 players on a football pitch. So if you've got 11 players on the football pitch and they all happen to come through this year's academy, and they're regulars, that means every academy year for the next 10 years is going to be unsuccessful. Why? Because, and I think we've spoken about this before, when Ryan Giggs comes into a team, you now have to get a better left winger than Ryan Giggs. Otherwise, every other left winger behind him is never going to get a game. Does that mean they're bad players? No, they're just not world class in Ryan Giggs or Paul Scholes or Gary Neville or David Beckham. All those players, they're not as good as those particular players. So when you get 5 or 6 of them in the team, you're never going to have any other player getting regular first team football. It's just how it works. So the actual percentage of players that can make it at that level is a very small percentage. So Apex is obviously right in that area, and that has nothing to do with the failure of the club, as long as they've got first team players coming through the system in the first team. So you've got Greenwood, you've got Rashford, you've got Mctominay, you've got Henderson on the sidelines, you've got Lingard, who's probably on his way, but he's obviously in the mix. You've got Pogba, who's injured. Well, if all those players were playing, how many more youth players do you think are going to get in there? If I'm trying to make myself clear here. So you can't say that we're not successful because we don't have 100 players in the first team all at the same time. What therefore happens, and it's just like any other elite process, what therefore happens is if you're better than Pogba has to fight for his place, and this player comes in. And then what happens with Pogba is either fights for his place and improves his performance, and this is just an example, or he gets sold to another club. And what happens with the Garners and the Galbraiths and all this, most of them won't fall into the Scholes and the Beckham kind of levels that the Greenwoods and the Rashfords, they have done. Okay, they're not at that elite level, but they're still England internationals. So they're going to have good careers at United playing hundreds of games because they're good enough to do that. Now it's up to the players behind them to look at that benchmark. So the Charlie Mcneal, he should be looking at Rashford and Sancho, not so much Sancho, he wasn't a youth player, but Rashford and Greenwood, and say, what am I going to have to do to displace those two players? And have I got it in me to do that? And if he has, he will be given a chance at our club. If he hasn't, he'll be sold and he'll go somewhere else and have a really good career in the game. And there's nothing ashameable about that. There's nothing that we should be concerned with that, because it's pure mathematics. If you've got 15 players a season in 10 years, you're going to have 150 players coming through the system. They can't all play. The maths doesn't make it happen. But that's the same as university. That's the same as business. Businesses have only got so many managerial tiers. So if you're on a management training program in a large organization, you can't all get management jobs because there's just not the opportunity there for you. You've got to wait for someone to cock it up, and so you get their place. You've got to be an extremely, extremely talented performer consistently, or you've got to wait for someone to leave. I mean, everybody talks about football as being, this conveyor belt, and it's not. It's got nothing to do with football. It's life. That's why we have apprenticeships as bricklayers. You've got to learn your trade, and you're only going to get paid the big money is when you start performing as an exceptional bricklayer or electrician or plumber or whatever it is. And then you've got to push someone else out of the role and prove that you're better than them. And that's the same with football. I think it's an interesting debate, but I still think that we're the best in the world at doing this type of thing. The record says so. The data says so. And good luck to those 150 kids, Connor, who are playing, I don't know if anybody noticed, but Owen Dodgson, who was in our academy 2 years ago, made his debut for Burnley on the weekend in the FA Cup against Huddersfield. And it was fantastic seeing his family just going mental on social media because his kids now are a professional footballer playing first team football for Burnley. Good luck to the kid. He was never going to make it at United, and the pathway there didn't exist. But that's not to say he's a bad player or he can't make it. We should be proud of that. We should be celebrating that. Just like we are an academy, we are a school. And these are our school kids who have gone on to be, theoretically, professional athletes in their chosen sport. Unbelievable, fantastic. If they're Olympians, would be celebrating it.
Absolutely. Just before we end the show, I'm going to obviously do a bit of a plug like I always do. I'm going to get the Holy Bible down here, Your book, this massive, great big book, Sons of United, all about the history of the Manchester United Academy. Got the FA Youth Cup winning teams in there and everything, and all you need to know about the great Manchester United way of the youth teams. Got a bit of dirt on there for some reason, but yeah, are they still available to buy outside? Is it must on a match day?
On match days, if you talk to the guys in the Must office, it's a tenner. I think it's about 680 odd pages. Lots of images as well that people might not have seen before. I noticed a couple of people. Vincent was talking about Bobby Charlton and Duncan Edwards. Lots of stuff in there of the Busby Babes. Lots of stuff in there about class of '92. Lots of stuff in there about the '82 team, the '64 team, the '68 team. It's just, and people say, "Oh, class of '92 is once in a lifetime." We keep doing it. We've been, class of 2011, Lingard, Pogba, the two Keanes, they're all internationals. Sam Johnston international. Class of 2011, 5 internationals in that team. But, it doesn't have the same ring as class of '92. Did you know there's more internationals in the class of 2011 than was in the class of '92?
There you go. It's an interesting point there, Nate. We learn something new every day, eh?
Yeah, definitely go and check that one out. Tony, you've been absolutely brilliant. I could talk to you for hours on, as I'm sure Benny as well, on all things United. So brilliant. Thanks for coming back on. Thanks to everyone in the comments as well.
Guys, really happy to come on board anytime.
Nice one. And yeah, like I said, thanks to everyone in the comments. There's been a lot of discussions and great questions in there as well. Benny, it's brilliant to have you back on.
Brilliant to be back on, mate. Trust me.
Me and Benny will obviously be back next Monday. We've got some huge guests coming up. Some things obviously we can't say at the moment, but we've got some really good ones in the obviously in the pipeline that will be announced shortly. But yeah, there's plenty of content obviously for the rest of the week. We're away obviously at Brentford on Wednesday nights. Check out all the match reaction and things for that, and make sure you like and subscribe as well. So thank you both, and we will see you guys soon.
Thank you.